An original werewolf story written by Wicked Serenity. Introduction. People believe Blackwood Pack is cursed. That somewhere deep within the ancient castle overlooking the territory, a king rules from the shadows. A king no one has ever seen. A king they call the Mad One. The stories vary. Some say he's a monster, more beast than man. Others whisper that he was born wrong, that his wolf emerged the moment he took his first breath, something that should be impossible. Something unnatural. His parents, the past king and queen, kept him hidden. Locked away in the highest tower, where his screams echoed through stone walls on full moon nights. They told the pack it was for everyone's safety. They said their son was too powerful, too dangerous, too mad. When the king and queen died 5 years ago, their son inherited the throne. King Fenrir. 28 years old and still unseen by his people. Still hidden. Still alone. But a king must have a queen. The bloodline must continue. And so the ritual began. Every month before the full moon, a maiden is chosen. Dressed in white, crowned with winter flowers, and sent to the castle to become the Mad King's bride. But the maidens never come back. Some say they die on the wedding night, torn apart by the king's wolf. Others claim they flee into the forest, driven mad by what they witnessed, and are never heard from again. 17 maidens in 5 years. 17 girls sent to marry a monster. And tonight there would be an 18th. Chapter 1. Her name was Wren. Not that anyone in the Ashford household cared to use it. To them she was simply the rogue girl. The orphan they'd taken in 7 years ago out of false charity, only to turn her into their personal servant. Wren was 19 years old and she couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at her with kindness. Her hands were rough from work, her body thin from eating only scraps. She had scars, some from accidents, others from Mistress Ashford's temper. She was a wolf without a pack. A shifter who couldn't shift. Her wolf had been so damaged by rejection and abuse that it had retreated deep inside her, silent and dormant. In a world where strength meant everything, Wren was considered weak. Worthless. On this particular morning she was on her knees in the kitchen, scrubbing the stone floor until her fingers bled. Mistress Ashford stood over her, arms crossed. "Faster, girl. My daughter Celeste has guests arriving this afternoon, and I won't have them seeing filth on my floors." Wren didn't look up. She'd learned that meeting their eyes only made things worse. "Yes, mistress." Celeste. The Ashfords' precious daughter. Beautiful, cunning, and cruel in the way only privileged girls can be. She was everything Wren wasn't. Admired, desired, free. As if summoned by thought alone, Celeste swept into the kitchen, her silk skirts rustling. She wrinkled her nose as she passed Wren. "Ugh, mother, must she do this while I'm trying to eat? She reeks." Mistress Ashford laughed. "Oh, darling, you won't have to tolerate her much longer. Once you're married off to the Henderson boy, we can send her back to whatever gutter she crawled from." Both women laughed. Wren bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted blood. She wanted to scream at them. To tell them that she hoped they choked on their cruelty. That one day somehow she'd be free of this place. But she didn't. She never did. Because girls like Wren didn't get happy endings. They just survived. That is, until late afternoon when everything changed. 3 guards from the pack house arrived at the door, dressed in black and silver. The crest of the Blackwood Pack gleamed on their chests, a wolf's head surrounded by thorns. Master Ashford opened the door, his face going pale. The lead guard unrolled a parchment. By order of the castle, under the authority of Guardian Aldrich, acting regent for King Fenrir of the Blackwood Pack, the maiden Celeste Ashford has been selected as the next bride for the king. She is to be prepared and delivered to the castle by nightfall tomorrow. Silence. Then Celeste screamed. "No, you can't, I won't. Mother, do something." Mistress Ashford's voice trembled. "There must be some mistake. Our daughter is already promised to another family. Surely someone else." The guard's expression remained cold. "There is no mistake. The decree has been issued. Failure to comply will result in exile for your entire family." The moment the guards left, chaos erupted. Celeste sobbed, clinging to her mother. Master Ashford paced like a caged animal. They all knew what this meant. Celeste wasn't coming back. Wren stood in the corner where she'd been serving tea, forgotten as always. She watched the family fall apart with a strange, hollow feeling in her chest. A part of her, a dark, bitter part she tried to ignore, felt satisfied. But then Master Ashford stopped pacing. His eyes, wild and desperate, landed on Wren. And she felt her blood run cold. "Wait," he said slowly. "The decree said the maiden Celeste Ashford. It said nothing about what she looks like." Mistress Ashford gasped. "You don't mean? She's the right age. Close enough in height. In the dark, who would know the difference?" All three sets of eyes turned to Wren. Her heart began to pound. "Oh, please," Wren whispered, her voice shaking. "Please, you can't." "Be silent, girl," Mistress Ashford snapped. "You should be grateful. We're giving you a chance to be useful for once in your miserable life." Master Ashford stepped closer, his voice menacing. "It's decided. Tomorrow you'll go to the castle in Celeste's place. You'll tell them you're our daughter. And if you dare speak a word of the truth, I'll make sure you suffer in ways that make the Mad King look merciful. Understand?" Wren couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. They were sending her to die. After years of abuse, of thankless service, of being treated like nothing, this was how it ended. Sacrificed to a monster so their precious daughter could live. She wanted to run. To fight. To scream. But where would she go? She had no pack. No family. No one who would protect her. So instead Wren did what she'd always done. She nodded. And she survived. Chapter 2. The next evening, as the sun began to set and paint the sky in shades of blood red, Wren sat in the back of a carriage bound for the castle. They dressed her in Celeste's wedding gown, white silk that was too fine for her rough hands, too loose on her thin frame. They'd woven winter flowers into her dark hair. She looked like a bride. He felt like a corpse. The guards riding alongside didn't speak to her. They didn't even look at her. To them she was just another maiden. Another sacrifice. Number 18. As they traveled deeper into the woods, the trees seemed to close in around them. The temperature dropped. The cheerful sounds of the packed town faded until there was only silence. And then through the trees she saw it. The castle rose from the mountainside like a beast of stone and shadow, all sharp towers and dark windows. No lights burned in those windows. No smoke rose from the chimneys. It looked abandoned. It looked haunted. "Oh gods," Wren whispered. The carriage stopped at the massive iron gates. They creaked open on their own as if the castle itself was welcoming her in. Or swallowing her whole. One of the guards finally spoke, his voice flat. "End of the line, miss. Someone will meet you inside." Wren stepped down on trembling legs. The moment her feet touched the ground, the carriage pulled away fast, like the guards couldn't leave quickly enough. She was alone. Wren stood there in her white dress and flower crown, staring up at the castle doors. Her whole body shook, from cold, from fear, from the terrible certainty that she was about to die. But then a voice in her head. Her own voice. Small but steady. "If I'm going to die anyway, at least it'll finally be over." And with that bleak comfort, Wren walked toward the doors. They opened before she could knock. Standing in the doorway was an older man with silver hair and hard, weary eyes. He wore dark clothing and carried himself like a warrior. This must be Aldrich, the guardian, the king's protector. He looked at her for a long moment, studied her face. Something like pity flickered in his gaze. "Another one," he said, his voice gruff and resigned. "Come inside, girl. Quickly now." She stepped into the castle and the doors slammed shut behind her with a sound like a tomb ceiling. "What's your name?" "Wren," she whispered. "Wren. Listen to me very carefully. The king, he's not himself most of the time. His wolf is too strong. It takes over. When you go in there, do not run. Do not scream. It only makes it worse." He paused, his voice growing quieter, almost kind. "I'm sorry, girl. I truly am." He led her through dark corridors, up winding staircases, higher and higher into the castle. Wren's heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back. But there was nowhere to go. Finally they stopped in front of a massive wooden door. Scratches marred its surface. Deep claw marks gouged into the wood. Aldrich pulled out a key. "This is his chamber. I'll lock the door behind you. In the morning, well, we'll see." The door swung open. Beyond it, darkness. Wren looked at Aldrich one last time, silently begging him to stop this. But he just shook his head. "May the moon goddess protect you, Wren." He gave her a gentle push. He stumbled across the threshold. The door slammed shut. The lock clicked. Footsteps faded away. And the darkness swallowed her whole. Wren stood frozen, her eyes struggling to adjust. The chamber was massive, she could sense that much. Cold air rushed past her face. Something felt wrong. The energy in the room was electric, chaotic, like a storm about to break. Then she heard it. A low, inhuman growl from somewhere in the shadows. Her breath caught. Every muscle in her body locked with terror. The growl came again, closer this time. And then she saw them. Two eyes glowing in the darkness. Not human eyes. Wolf eyes. Burning gold and completely wild. Something massive moved toward her. She could hear claws scraping against stone. Heavy breathing. The scent of earth and blood and something primal filled her nose. This was it. This was how she died. The creature, the king, the wolf, whatever he was, circled her slowly. She felt his presence like a physical weight pressing down on her. She couldn't see him clearly, just glimpses. Towering height. Broad shoulders. Something wrong with the way he moved, like man and beast were fighting for control of the same body. Another growl, this one tinged with something that might have been pain. Wren's legs gave out. She collapsed to her knees, the white dress pooling around her. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. She wanted to run, to scream, but Aldrich's words echoed in her mind. "Do not run. Do not scream." The creature stopped directly in front of her. She could feel his heat, hear his ragged breathing. He was so close. One swipe of those claws and it would be over. She closed her eyes and waited for death. But it didn't come. Instead, a sound escaped her throat. Not a scream. Not words. A melody. Soft and broken and desperate. She was singing. It was instinct, nothing more. The same lullaby her birth mother had sung to her before she'd been abandoned. The only comfort Wren had ever known. The notes tumbled out of her, shaky and small in the vast darkness. And something impossible happened. The growling stopped. Wren's eyes flew open. The glowing eyes were still there, still fixed on her, but they were different now. Less wild. Almost confused. She kept singing, her voice growing steadier. The melody filled the chamber, soft and sweet and achingly sad. The massive form in front of her shifted. She heard the sound of bones cracking, reshaping. A pained groan that was more human than animal. And then a voice. Rough and broken, barely more than a rasp. "Don't stop." Wren's breath hitched, but she obeyed. She sang the lullaby again and again until her throat was raw. Slowly the tension in the room began to ease. The electric chaos faded to something calmer. The glowing eyes dimmed, flickered, and finally closed. A heavy thud echoed through the chamber as someone, collapsed to the floor. Silence. Wren sat there in the darkness, trembling, her voice finally giving out. She had no idea what had just happened. Had she calmed him? Had the wolf retreated? Was he unconscious? Dead? Was she safe? Minutes passed. Or maybe hours. She couldn't tell. She was too terrified to move, too exhausted to think. Finally she heard it. Breathing. Slow and steady. Human breathing. He was alive. And for now at least he wasn't trying to kill her. Wren wrapped her arms around herself and leaned against the cold stone wall. Her whole body ached. Her mind was numb. She'd survived the first night. Barely. But as she sat there in the darkness, listening to the Mad King's sleeping breaths, one thought echoed through her mind. How many more nights could she endure before her luck ran out? Chapter 3. When dawn finally crept through the narrow window, Wren saw him for the first time. He lay on the floor several feet away, his massive frame sprawled across the stone. He was shirtless, his skin pale and covered in scars, some old and silver, others fresh and red. His dark hair was long and unkempt, falling across a face that might have been handsome if not for the exhaustion carved into every line. But it was his hands that made her stomach turn. His fingers were stained with dried blood. Claw marks, his own claw marks, raked across his chest and arms as if he'd been fighting himself. This was King Fenrir, the Mad King, and he looked more like a prisoner than a ruler. The lock on the door clicked. Wren flinched as Aldrich entered, his expression carefully neutral. His eyes swept the room, taking in the scene, Wren alive and huddled against the wall, the king unconscious but breathing. Something that might have been relief crossed his face. "You survived," Aldrich said quietly. "That's rare." Wren's voice came out hoarse. "What happens now?" "Now you rest. Recover. And tonight," he glanced at the king's prone form. "Tonight we do it all again." Her heart sank. "Every night. Until the full moon passes. 3 more nights." Aldrich's expression softened slightly. "I know it's not fair, girl. None of this is fair. But if you can survive 3 more nights, there's a chance, a small chance, that he might stabilize. That the bond might begin to form. And if I can't survive?" Aldrich didn't answer. He didn't need to. 2 servants entered and carefully lifted the king's unconscious body, carrying him to the massive bed in the corner. Wren hadn't even noticed it in the darkness. They worked quickly, efficiently, as if this was routine. "Come," Aldrich said to Wren. "I'll take you to your chambers." He led her down the corridor to a smaller room. It was simple but clean, with a bed, a wash basin, and a window that overlooked the forest. A prison with a nicer view. "Food will be brought to you. Don't try to leave the castle. The woods are dangerous, and the guards have orders to bring back anyone who flees." He paused at the door. "Get some sleep, Wren. You'll need your strength." The door closed. She heard no lock this time, but it didn't matter. She had nowhere to go. Wren collapsed onto the bed and stared at the ceiling. Her mind raced with everything she'd seen, everything she'd felt. The king's wolf, his pain, his voice begging her not to stop singing. She should have been relieved to be alive. Instead she just felt numb. This was her life now. Trapped in a castle with a monster, surviving night after night, until she either died or went mad herself. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but all she could see were those glowing gold eyes in the darkness. The first week crawled by in a haze of fear and exhaustion. Every evening Aldrich would come for her. Every evening she'd be locked in that chamber. And every evening she'd face the king's wolf. Sometimes he was worse than others. On the second night he'd lunged at her, and she'd barely had time to start singing before his claws raked the wall beside her head. On the third night he'd paced the room like a caged animal, growling and snarling, while she sang until her voice gave out. But she was learning. Learning that certain melodies calmed him faster. Learning to keep her voice steady even when her hands shook. Learning to read the subtle shifts in his energy, when the man was fighting for control and when the wolf had won. And slowly, impossibly, something began to change. By the end of the first week, the king started responding to her voice faster. The wild chaos in the room would settle sooner. Sometimes, in those brief moments before he collapsed into unconsciousness, she'd catch glimpses of awareness in his eyes. Recognition. On the 8th night something different happened. She'd finished her 3rd lullaby when his voice cut through the darkness. Not a rasp this time. Clear. "Why do you sing that song?" Wren froze. He was still hidden in shadow, but she could feel him watching her. It's the only song I know," she whispered. "My mother sang it to me. Before she abandoned me." Silence. "Then, she was a fool." Wren blinked. "What?" "To abandon you." His voice was rough, pained, but undeniably human. "You have a gift. Your voice. It's the only thing that's ever quieted the wolf." Her heart hammered. "I don't understand. What's wrong with you? Why is your wolf like this?" A bitter laugh echoed through the chamber. "I was born wrong. Born with my wolf already awake. They tried everything. Chains, cages, potions. Nothing worked. The wolf wants blood. Wants freedom. Wants..." He trailed off. "It doesn't matter. You should hate me. They all do. I don't hate you, Wren said, surprising herself. I'm terrified of you. But I don't hate you. Another silence. Then the sound of movement. He was coming closer. Wren's breath caught, but she forced herself to stay still. Do not run. Do not scream. He stepped into the faint moonlight streaming through the window, and for the first time she saw him clearly. Tall and powerfully built, with sharp features and eyes that shifted between human brown and wolf gold. His jaw was clenched, every muscle tense, as if it took all his strength just to stand there without attacking. You should run, he said quietly. While I'm still in control. You should run and never come back. Wren met his eyes. Where would I go? Something flickered across his face. Understanding maybe. Or recognition of a shared imprisonment. Nowhere, he said finally. There's nowhere for either of us. He turned away, his hands curling into fists. Leave. No. Before I lose control again. Wren stood on shaking legs and moved toward the door. But before she knocked for Aldrich, she looked back. Tomorrow, she said softly. I'll come back tomorrow. She thought she saw him nod. But then his body convulsed and the growling started again. Aldrich opened the door just in time. As it slammed shut behind her, she heard the king's anguished roar echo through the castle. And for the first time since arriving, Wren felt something other than fear. She felt pity. Chapter 4. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of locked chambers and lullabies. 3 weeks of watching the king fight himself. 3 weeks of exhaustion and terror and strange, fragile moments of connection. Wren was surviving. But barely. Her body was wearing down. She hardly slept, barely ate. The servants brought her food, but she had no appetite. Everything tasted like ash. She was growing thinner, paler, weaker. But she kept singing. Kept returning to that chamber every night. Because despite everything, despite the fear and the exhaustion and the hopelessness of it all, something had shifted. The king, Fenrir, though she still couldn't bring herself to call him that, was talking to her now. Brief conversations in those precious moments when his wolf retreated. He'd ask about her life and she'd tell him stories about the Ashford household, about being a rogue, about feeling invisible. And he'd listen. Really listen. Like her words mattered. In turn, he told her fragments of his own story. About growing up in isolation. About parents who loved him but feared him. About the crushing loneliness of never being seen as anything but a monster. I used to dream about having a conversation, he'd said one night, his voice hollow. Just one normal conversation with someone who wasn't afraid. And now here you are, and all I can give you is fear. You're giving me more than that, Wren had replied quietly. You're giving me honesty. No one's ever been honest with me before. She'd seen something break in his expression then. Something that looked almost like hope. But hope was dangerous. Because on the 23rd night, everything went wrong. Wren had entered the chamber as usual, had started singing as usual. But Fenrir's wolf was worse than she'd ever seen it. Wild. Uncontrollable. The energy in the room was suffocating. She sang louder, more desperately, but nothing was working. The wolf paced, snarled, its glowing eyes fixed on her with predatory focus. And then it lunged. Wren screamed, she couldn't help it, and threw herself to the side. Claws raked the air where she'd been standing. She scrambled backward, her heart exploding in her chest. The wolf came at her again. She raised her arms instinctively, bracing for the pain, for the end. But at the last second, Fenrir threw himself sideways. Away from her. His body slammed into the wall with brutal force. He was fighting it. Fighting himself. Run, he roared, his voice distorted and agonized. Wren, run. But she couldn't. Her legs wouldn't move. She watched in horror as he clawed at himself, drawing blood, trying to force the wolf back through sheer will. It wasn't working. Please, he gasped. Please, I can't. I'm going to hurt you. Wren did the only thing she could think of. She sang. Not a lullaby this time. A different song. Louder, stronger, pouring every ounce of emotion she had into it. Fear and sorrow and desperate, desperate hope. The wolf paused. Its eyes locked on her. She kept singing even as tears streamed down her face. Even as Fenrir's body convulsed and shook. even as she thought this might be the night she finally died. And then, slowly, miraculously, the glow in his eyes began to dim. The wolf retreated. Fenrir collapsed to his knees, gasping, shaking, blood dripping from the wounds he'd inflicted on himself. His human eyes found hers, filled with anguish. "I almost killed you," he whispered. "But you didn't." Wren's voice shook. "You stopped yourself. You fought it. I can't keep doing this to you. I can't." His voice broke. "You need to leave, Wren. Leave and never come back. I'll tell Aldrich you died. I'll tell them anything. Just go. Please." Wren stared at him. At this broken king who'd just used every ounce of his strength to protect her from himself. And she realized something that terrified her more than his wolf ever could. She didn't want to leave. "No," she said softly. His eyes widened. "What?" "I'm not leaving." She took a shaky breath. "You're not the only one who's trapped, Fenrir. You're not the only one who's spent their whole life being treated like they're worth nothing. But for the first time, someone sees me. You see me. Wren." "I'm staying," she said firmly. "I'm staying, and tomorrow night I'll come back. And the night after that. Until this works. Until you're free." She saw the exact moment something shifted in his expression. The despair gave way to something else. Something fragile and precious. "Hope." "You're insane," he said, but there was no bite to it. Almost a smile. "Maybe." She managed a weak smile back. "But so are you. We're a perfect match." Aldrich opened the door then, drawn by the commotion. He took in the scene, the blood, the destruction. Wren still alive, and exhaled slowly. "Come, girl. You need rest." As Wren left, she looked back one more time. Fenrir was still kneeling there, watching her with those impossible eyes. "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow," he echoed. The door closed between them. But the next morning when Wren woke, something was wrong. Her body ached. Her head pounded. When she tried to stand, her legs gave out. The room spun around her. A servant found her collapsed on the floor and called for Aldrich. "What's happening to me?" Wren gasped, her vision blurring. Aldrich's expression darkened. "Someone's poisoning you." Chapter 5. The next 2 weeks were a nightmare. Wren was confined to her bed, too weak to stand, while Aldrich investigated. Someone in the castle was trying to kill her, and they had no idea who. But the worst part wasn't the sickness. It was being separated from Fenrir. Every night she'd hear his roars echoing through the castle. Without her voice to calm him, the wolf was completely out of control. Servants whispered that he was destroying his chambers, that he was worse than he'd been in years. And she was helpless to stop it. On the 5th day of her illness, Aldrich came to her room looking grim. "We found traces of nightshade in your food," he said. "Someone's been dosing you slowly. Trying to make it look natural." "Who?" Wren's voice was hoarse. "We're investigating everyone. The kitchen staff, the servants." He hesitated. "There's something else. The king wants to see you." "I can barely stand." "I know. But he's deteriorating. Rapidly. He won't eat. Won't sleep. Just paces and destroys everything in reach. I think." Aldrich's stern expression cracked slightly. "I think he needs you, girl. The same way you need him." They carried her to Fenrir's chamber on a stretcher. The moment the door opened, she heard the growling. "Fenrir," Aldrich called. "She's here. But she's ill. You need to control yourself." The growling stopped. Movement in the shadows. "Wren." His voice was raw, desperate. She tried to sit up, failed. "I'm here," she managed. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't come." Suddenly he was there, kneeling beside her stretcher. In the lamplight she saw how much worse he looked. Gaunt. Wild. Barely holding on. But the moment his eyes met hers, something in them cleared. "You're dying," he said flatly. "Someone's poisoning me. We don't know who yet." His expression went cold. "Dangerous. When I find out who did this, I'll tear them apart." "Fenrir. You're healing me, Wren. Don't you understand? For the first time in my life, the wolf and I are starting to coexist. Because of you. Because of your voice. Your presence." His hand hovered over hers, not quite touching. And someone's trying to take that away. To take you away. I'm not going anywhere, Wren said weakly. You might not have a choice. But then his wolf stirred. She saw his eyes flicker gold. Saw his muscles tense. And she did the only thing she could. She sang. Her voice was barely a whisper, cracked and thin. But it was enough. The gold faded. The tension eased. Fenrir closed his eyes and just listened, his expression smoothing into something almost peaceful. When the song ended, he looked at her with such raw emotion it made her chest ache. I can't lose you, he said quietly. I won't survive it. Then help me find who's doing this. He nodded once. I will. I promise. Over the next week they worked together. Wren would spend her days recovering in her room and her evenings in Fenrir's chamber. She was still too weak to stand, so they'd bring her on a stretcher. She'd sing until her voice gave out and then they'd just talk. He told her about the castle's history, about the pack politics she didn't understand. She told him stories, made him laugh, something the servants claimed they'd never heard before. And slowly she began to heal. The nightshade was out of her system. Her strength was returning. But they still hadn't found the poisoner. Until the night Wren couldn't sleep and decided to get water herself. It was late, well past midnight. The castle was silent as she made her way down to the kitchens, still weak but determined to do something on her own. She was almost there when she heard voices. Low, conspiratorial voices coming from the kitchen itself. Wren froze and pressed herself against the wall, listening. Increasing the dose, a woman was saying. The rogue is stronger than I expected. Are you certain about this, Margot? A second voice, younger, nervous. Margot, the head of the kitchen staff. A stern woman in her 50s who'd always been coldly efficient. Of course I'm certain. Margot hissed. That girl is healing him. I've seen it. He's been more lucid, more controlled. If she stays much longer, he'll be fully stable. And I can't allow that. But why? Because his parents destroyed my pack. Margot's voice turned vicious. The Shadowmere pack. They wiped us out. Killed my daughter, my mate, everyone I loved. And I've spent 20 years making sure their son would never be the king they wanted him to be. I've been poisoning him slowly, keeping him unstable, and it's worked. Wren's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. The maidens, the younger voice asked. Dead. All of them. I made it look like he killed them. Staged the scenes. Let the legend grow. And it was perfect until this rogue survived. Until she started healing him. What do we do? Tonight, Margot said coldly. We end this tonight. The girl is weak from the poison. I'll slip into her room and finish the job. By morning she'll be another victim of the Mad King. Footsteps headed toward the kitchen door. Wren ran. She stumbled through the corridors, her heart hammering, her weak legs barely carrying her. She had to get to Fenrir. Had to warn someone. Had to... A hand grabbed her arm. Wren spun and found herself face to face with Margot. The woman's expression was cold, calculating. You heard, Margot said simply. Let me go. Margot pulled a knife from her apron. I don't think so, girl. You're going to die tonight. Just like all the others. Wren tried to scream, but Margot's hand clamped over her mouth. The older woman was surprisingly strong, dragging her toward a side corridor, away from the main hall where someone might hear. This was it. After everything, after surviving the wolf, after finally finding a reason to live. This was how it ended. But then from somewhere deep in the castle, a roar erupted. Not human. Not quite wolf. Something in between. Fenrir. He'd heard her. Somehow, impossibly, he'd heard her distress. Heavy footsteps thundered through the corridors. Margot's eyes widened. No, she breathed. He's supposed to be locked. The Mad King exploded around the corner. Except he wasn't mad. He was focused. Controlled. His eyes, burning gold but fully aware, locked onto Margot. Then onto the knife in her hand. The hand clamped over Wren's mouth. And something terrible crossed his face. Let her go. His voice was a growl, but every word was clear. Man and wolf speaking as one. Margot shoved Wren away and raised the knife. You should have died years ago just like your parents deserved. I've dedicated my life to making sure you'd never be the king they dreamed of. I know who you are now, Fenrir said, his voice deadly calm as he stalked toward her. Margot of the Shadowmere pack. I know what my parents did. And I know what you've done. Then you know I won't stop. Margot lunged with the knife. Fenrir moved faster than Wren thought possible. He caught Margot's wrist mid-strike, twisted, and the knife clattered to the floor. The woman struggled, but he held her effortlessly, his strength overwhelming. But here was the miracle, he didn't kill her. The wolf wanted to, Wren could see it in his eyes, the way his muscles trembled with restraint. But the man held control. Aldrich. Fenrir's voice echoed through the castle. Within moments, the guardian appeared with several guards. They took in the scene instantly. Take her to the dungeons, Fenrir ordered, releasing Margot into their custody. She's been poisoning both me and the girl for weeks. And she murdered the previous maidens. Margot laughed bitterly as the guards seized her. It doesn't matter. You'll never be fully stable. Never be fully free. The damage is already done. That's where you're wrong, Fenrir said quietly, his eyes finding Wren's. I'm already free. As they dragged Margot away, still screaming accusations and threats, Fenrir crossed to Wren in 2 strides. She was slumped against the wall, shaking, tears streaming down her face. You heard me, she whispered. I didn't even scream. How did you? I felt it. He knelt beside her, his expression raw. I felt your fear. Like something inside me broke. I tore the door off its hinges to get to you. You controlled yourself. Your wolf, you worked together. Because of you. His hand finally touched hers, tentative, gentle. Everything is because of you. Wren looked at their joined hands and started to cry. Not from fear or pain this time, but from relief. From exhaustion. From the overwhelming realization that it was finally over. I thought I was going to die, she sobbed. I thought after everything, after finally finding something worth living for. You're not dying. Fenrir's other hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing away tears. Not tonight. Not ever, if I have anything to say about it. She saw it then, clear in his eyes. The same thing she'd been too afraid to name in herself. Fenrir. I'm in love with you, he said simply. I know it's insane. I know we've only known each other a month. But you gave me something I thought I'd never have. Hope. Humanity. A reason to fight. Wren's breath caught. I don't know if what I feel is real or if it's just because I had nowhere else to go. I don't know if I'm healing you out of kindness or just survival. I'm so confused. Then don't decide tonight. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her trembling frame. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. And neither are you. She buried her face in his chest and let herself fall apart. And for the first time in her life, someone held her while she broke. Someone kept her safe. Someone chose her. Chapter 6. The weeks that followed were strange and fragile and beautiful. With Margot imprisoned and the poisoning stopped, both Wren and Fenrir began to truly heal. The castle that had felt like a tomb started to feel almost like a home. Fenrir's transformations became less violent. With Wren's nightly songs and her steady presence, he was learning to control the shift between man and wolf. They were still separate entities but no longer enemies. More like reluctant partners. Aldrich watched the transformation with barely concealed amazement. In 28 years I never thought I'd see this, he admitted one morning. You've given him what no cage or chain ever could. Peace. But Wren struggled. She was safe now. Fed well. Treated with respect. The servants who'd once ignored her now bowed. Aldrich called her my lady. Everything had changed. And yet she felt hollow. Confused. Angry at herself for not knowing what she wanted. One evening as they sat in the castle garden, a place Fenrir had only recently been able to visit without losing control, she finally voiced what had been eating at her. I don't know if my feelings are real, she said quietly. Fenrir, who'd been watching the sunset, turned to look at her. What do you mean? I've spent my whole life being abused. Being told I'm worthless. And then I came here and you're the first person who's ever treated me like I matter. How do I know I'm not just latching onto that. How do I know this isn't just survival instinct? He was quiet for a long moment. Do you want to leave? The question hit her like a physical blow. What? If you want to leave, I'll let you go. I'll give you money, resources, safe passage to any pack you choose. I won't force you to stay. But I thought. I love you, Fenrir said simply. But I won't trap you the way I've been trapped my whole life. You deserve the freedom to choose. Wren stared at him. At this man who'd been caged and isolated and treated like a monster, offering her the one thing no one had ever offered before. A choice. I don't want to leave, she said slowly. I don't know if I'm staying because I want to or because I'm afraid. Then figure it out. His expression was gentle. Take time. Explore the castle. Explore the territory. Find out who Wren is when she's not just surviving. And when you really know, then make your choice. Over the next month, that's exactly what she did. She explored the castle's vast library and discovered she loved reading. She walked the grounds and found she could identify plants and herbs, a skill from her childhood she'd forgotten. She started helping in the healing wing, using her gentle nature to comfort injured pack members. And slowly she discovered something terrifying and wonderful. She had a gift. When she was near wolves who were distressed or injured, her presence calmed them. Pack members started seeking her out, saying they felt better after talking to her. Even Aldrich admitted his chronic pain improved when she was near. You're an empath, an elderly healer told her. It's rare. Very rare. Your wolf is weak, yes, but only because all its energy goes into this gift. You feel others' pain and can ease it. Suddenly her whole life made sense. The reason the Ashford's cruelty had destroyed her so thoroughly. The reason Fenrir's wolf had responded to her when no one else could reach him. She wasn't weak. She'd never been weak. She was just different. And for the first time in her life, Wren felt pride. Real, genuine pride in who she was. But the real test came when Fenrir announced he needed to address the pack. They need to see me, he explained. Really see me. Not as a monster or a legend but as their king. It was the first time he'd appeared before his people since childhood. And he wanted Wren beside him. You don't have to come, he said. I won't force. I want to, she interrupted. If you can face them, so can I. The day of the gathering, Wren dressed in simple but elegant clothing. No more servants' rags. No more hiding. As they walked onto the balcony overlooking the gathered pack, she felt hundreds of eyes land on them. Whispers erupted. The Mad King. The rogue who survived. Fenrir's hand found hers, squeezed gently. He squeezed back. Then he spoke. His voice carried across the crowd, strong and clear. He told them the truth. About his condition, about the poisoning, about Margot's vendetta. He told them about the maidens who died and how he'd never killed any of them. And he told them about Wren. This woman saved my life, he said. Not through strength or power but through compassion. Through her gift for healing broken things. She saw a monster and chose to see a man instead. The crowd was silent, riveted. I know many of you fear me. Some of you hate me. I understand. But I'm asking for a chance. A chance to prove I can lead this pack. To prove I'm more than the Mad King. He turned to Wren then, his expression open and vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. And I'm asking you, he said, his voice dropping so only she could hear, to stay with me. Not as a prisoner. Not out of obligation. But because you choose to. Wren looked out at the crowd. At the pack that had never wanted her. She saw familiar faces, people who'd sneered at her, insulted her, treated her like dirt. And now they were watching her stand beside their king. He thought about running. About taking the freedom Fenrir offered and disappearing into a new life. But then she thought about the girl who'd arrived at this castle 5 weeks ago. Broken. Hopeless. Wishing for death. And she thought about the woman she'd become. Strong. Gifted. Finally seen. I choose to stay, she said clearly, her voice carrying. Not because I have nowhere else to go. But because for the first time in my life I want to be exactly where I am. The words were for Fenrir. But they were also for herself. She saw the exact moment he understood. The hope that had been carefully guarded in his eyes blazed into something fiercer. Something that looked like joy. He smiled. A real smile, the first she'd ever seen from him, and it transformed his entire face. "Then stay," he said. "Stay and be my queen. My partner. My equal." "Yes," Wren said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. "Yes." The crowd erupted into applause. Not everyone. Some faces remained skeptical, hostile. But enough. Enough to matter. As they stood there together, hand in hand, Wren felt something shift inside her. The part of her that had always felt broken, unworthy, invisible. It was still there. But it was quieter now. Because she'd finally learned the truth. She wasn't worthless. She never had been. She'd just been surviving in a world that didn't know how to value softness. That didn't understand that strength came in many forms. But she understood now. And so did the man beside her. Epilogue. 6 months later, Wren stood in the same garden where she'd once questioned everything, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. She was no longer the frightened girl who'd arrived in a white dress. Her body had filled out with regular meals. Her hands, though still scarred, were gentle and sure. She wore the title of queen not as a burden, but as a choice she renewed every day. Fenrir emerged from the castle and crossed to her, moving with the easy grace of someone finally at peace with themselves. His wolf was still there, still powerful, but no longer a prison. They'd learned to coexist. To work together. "Aldrich says the Northern Border Patrol reported no issues," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "And the harvest looks good this year." Wren leaned back against him, content. "Did you tell him about our plans?" "Not yet. I wanted to make sure you were certain." She turned in his arms to face him. "I'm certain. I want to create a sanctuary. 4 rogues and rejected wolves. A place where they can heal and find their place. Using your gift." "Using my gift," she confirmed. "I spent so many years being treated as worthless because I was different. I want to show others like me that different doesn't mean broken." Fenrir cupped her face, his expression tender. "Have I told you today that you're remarkable?" "Twice. But I wouldn't mind hearing it again." He laughed. That sound that had been so rare at first and was now wonderfully common. "You're remarkable. Stubborn. Impossibly kind. And I love you more every day. Even when I make you attend pack councils? Even then." She smiled and kissed him softly. "I love you too. My mad king." "Not mad anymore." "No," she agreed. "Not mad. Just mine." As the sun set and the first stars appeared, Wren thought about the girl she'd been. The one who'd hated her life so much she'd welcomed death. The one who couldn't imagine a future worth living. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who'd learned that healing, real healing, wasn't about erasing scars. It was about learning to carry them while still moving forward. She'd healed a king. Built a home. Found her purpose. But most importantly, she'd healed herself. And for the first time in her life, when Wren looked toward tomorrow, she didn't see darkness. She saw possibility. She saw hope. She saw a life worth living. And she smiled. The end of Wren and Fenrir's story. But this is just the beginning for this channel. If you enjoyed this tale of the Mad King and his queen, hit that subscribe button and join our growing community of paranormal story lovers. I've got more dark romances, supernatural mysteries, and fantasy tales coming your way. Drop a comment below and tell me, would you have stayed in the castle or would you have run? And what kind of paranormal stories do you want to hear next? Werewolves? Vampires? Let me know. Don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who loves a good paranormal romance. Your support helps me create more stories like this. Until next time, stay curious, and maybe stay away from mysterious castles.